morning sun shined bright through the tall glass windows of Jefferson National Bank. It was a Tuesday and the bank was busy with people coming and going. Some people waited in line to see the bank workers. Others sat at desks filling out papers. The sound of keyboards clicking and quiet conversations filled the air. A black man walked through the front doors. He wore a nice dark blue suit that fit him perfectly. His shoes were polished and clean. He looked like he was in his late 40s with a few gray hairs showing at his temples. His face was kind but serious. He held the hand of a little girl who walked beside him. The girl was only 7 years old. She had her hair pulled back in 2 neat ponytails with pink ribbons. She wore a pretty yellow dress and white shoes. In her other hand, she carried an old brown teddy bear. The bear looked like it had been loved for many years. One of its button eyes hung loose by a thread. The girl held it close to her chest as she walked. The father looked down at his daughter and smiled. She looked up at him and smiled back. Her hand felt small and warm in his. They walked across the shiny floor together, their footsteps making soft sounds. The girl looked around at everything with wide eyes. She had never been inside a bank before. They walked up to one of the counters where the bank workers sat. Behind the counter was a woman named Sarah Mitchell. She was 32 years old with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore a gray suit and a white shirt. Her makeup was perfect and her nails were painted red. Sarah looked up from her computer screen when they approached. Her eyes moved from the father to the little girl, then back to the father. Something changed in her face. Her smile, which had been there a moment ago, became smaller and tighter. Her eyes narrowed just a little bit. It was a small change, but the father noticed it right away. "Good morning," the father said in a polite voice. "I would like to open a savings account for my daughter, please." The little girl looked up at Sarah and gave her a shy smile. She hugged her teddy bear a little tighter. Sarah did not smile back at the girl. Instead, she looked at the father with a cool expression. "I see," she said. Her voice was flat and not very friendly. "And what is the purpose of this account?" The father seemed a little surprised by the question, but he answered patiently. "I want to teach my daughter about saving money. She is getting old enough to learn about being responsible with money. I thought a savings account would be a good way to start." Sarah nodded slowly, but her face did not look convinced. "Uh-huh," she said. She typed something on her computer, her long nails clicking on the keys. "I will need to see your identification. Driver's license, social security card, proof of address, and birth certificates for both of you." The father reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet. "Of course," he said. He took out his driver's license and handed it to Sarah. Then he pulled out some other papers he had brought with him. He had known he would need identification, so he had come prepared. Sarah took the license and held it up close to her face. She looked at it for a long time, much longer than she needed to. She turned it over and looked at the back. Then she held it up to the light as if checking to see if it was real. "This looks suspicious," she said suddenly. The father's eyebrows went up. "Excuse me?" "Your license. Something about it does not look right to me," Sarah said. She put the license down on the counter but did not push it back to him. "That license is real," the father said. His voice was still calm, but there was a slight edge to it now. "I renewed it just 6 months ago at the DMV." Sarah made a humming sound but did not say anything else about it. Instead, she looked at the other papers he had given her. She studied each one carefully, taking her time. Behind the father and his daughter, other people were starting to line up. They waited patiently, but some of them began to check their watches. "And where did you get the money you want to deposit?" Sarah asked. She looked right into the father's eyes when she asked this question. The father stared back at her. "I earned it," he said simply. "From my job." "What kind of job?" Sarah asked. "I work in healthcare," the father said. His jaw was tight now. The little girl looked up at her father. She could feel that something was wrong. The way the lady was talking to her daddy was not nice. The girl's fingers squeezed her father's hand a little tighter. The father looked down and saw the worried look on his daughter's face. He squeezed her hand back gently and gave her a reassuring smile. "Everything is okay, sweetheart," he whispered to her. Sarah watched this exchange with a blank face. Then she said, "I need to verify some things. This will take a few minutes." She stood up from her chair and walked away from the counter without saying anything else. The father and daughter stood there waiting. Behind them, more people joined the line. At the counter next to them, another bank worker was helping customers quickly. A white man in casual clothes walked up. The worker smiled at him warmly and processed his deposit in less than 3 minutes. Then an elderly white woman came next. She also was helped quickly with a friendly conversation. The father noticed this. His eyes moved from one counter to the other. His daughter noticed him looking and followed his gaze. She did not understand what was happening, but she knew something was not fair. After several minutes, Sarah came back, but she was not alone. A man walked with her. He was tall and thin with brown hair and glasses. He wore a name tag that said Daniel Supervisor. Sarah leaned close to Daniel and whispered something. She kept looking at the father while she talked. Daniel's face looked uncomfortable. He glanced at the father and daughter, then back at Sarah. He took the documents from Sarah's hand and began to look through them himself. "Sir," Daniel said, his voice much more polite than Sarah's had been. "We just need to verify a few things. This is standard procedure for new accounts." But the father knew this was not standard procedure. He had opened accounts before. His wife had opened accounts. His friends had opened accounts. None of them had been treated like this. He knew exactly what was happening, and anger began to burn in his chest. But he pushed it down. He would not lose his temper, not here, not in front of his daughter. "Take all the time you need," the father said quietly. His daughter looked up at him again. This time there were tears starting to form in her eyes. Daniel held the documents in his hands and looked through them carefully. He checked the driver's license first, holding it under the light just like Sarah had done. But unlike Sarah, Daniel could see that there was nothing wrong with it. It was a real license. Everything looked correct. He checked the social security cards next, then the birth certificates, then the proof of address. Everything was in order. Everything was real. Daniel felt uncomfortable because he knew Sarah had called him over for no good reason. But Sarah stood next to him with her arms crossed, watching him with expectant eyes. "These all look fine to me," Daniel said quietly to Sarah. "But did you check them carefully?" Sarah said, her voice low. "Really carefully?" Daniel looked at her. He had worked with Sarah for 2 years. He had never liked the way she sometimes treated certain customers. He had noticed it before, but had never said anything. Now he wished he had spoken up sooner. "Yes, I checked them carefully," Daniel said. "Everything is legitimate." Sarah's mouth became a thin line. She took the documents back from Daniel and returned to her counter. The father and daughter were still standing there waiting. The little girl had moved even closer to her father now. She pressed against his leg and held her teddy bear with both hands. "I need to make a phone call to verify your employment," Sarah said to the father. The father took a deep breath. "To verify my employment?" he repeated. "For opening a savings account for my daughter?" "Yes," Sarah said firmly. "It is our policy." "I have opened accounts at this bank before," the father said. "I was never asked to do this." "Well, I am asking now," Sarah said. Her tone was sharp. Behind them, the line of people had grown longer. There were now 6 people waiting. Some of them were starting to look annoyed. They could not hear everything that was being said, but they could see that something was taking a very long time. They could see the tension in the air. An elderly white woman with gray hair and a purple coat stood third in line. She had kind eyes and a gentle face. She watched what was happening with growing concern. She could hear some of what Sarah was saying, and she did not like what she was hearing. At the next counter, another white man walked up. He wanted to open a new account too. The bank worker there greeted him with a big smile. She asked for just his driver's license and one other form of ID. Within 5 minutes, his account was open. He thanked the worker and walked away happy. The elderly woman in the purple coat saw this. She looked from that counter to the one where the father and daughter stood. Her eyebrows came together in a frown. Sarah was now on her phone, supposedly calling to verify the father's employment. But the father could hear that she was mostly on hold, listening to music. She would put the phone down, type something on her computer, then pick up the phone again. She was taking much longer than necessary. The little girl tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered. "Can we go home?" The father looked down at his daughter. His heart broke a little when he saw the sad look on her face. He knelt down so he was at her eye level. "Soon, baby," he said softly. "We just need to wait a little bit longer. I promise it will be okay." "But why is that lady being mean to us?" the girl asked. Her voice was so quiet that only her father could hear. The father did not know how to answer that question. How could he explain this to a 7-year-old? How could he explain that some people judged others by the color of their skin? That some people made assumptions without knowing anything about you? He wanted to protect her from this truth for as long as possible. But here it was, happening right in front of her eyes. Some people forget their manners sometimes, he finally said. But that does not mean we forget ours. We will be patient and polite, okay? The girl nodded, but tears were starting to roll down her cheeks. She tried to wipe them away quickly with her hand. Sarah finally hung up the phone. I could not reach anyone at your workplace, she said. I will need additional verification. What kind of additional verification? The father asked. He was still kneeling next to his daughter, and now he stood back up. I need to see pay stubs. Recent ones. From the last 3 months, Sarah said. The father stared at her in disbelief. Pay stubs? I do not carry pay stubs with me. Then I am afraid we cannot open this account today, Sarah said. There was something almost like satisfaction in her voice. This is ridiculous, the father said. His voice was louder now. Some of the people in line looked up. You are making up requirements that do not exist. I have banked here for 15 years. I have never been treated like this. Sir, please lower your voice, Sarah said. If you continue to be disruptive, I will have to ask you to leave. The elderly woman in the purple coat stepped forward. Excuse me, she said in a firm voice. I have been standing here watching this whole thing. That man has not been disruptive at all. You have been treating him terribly. Sarah turned to look at the elderly woman. Her face flushed red. Ma'am, this does not concern you. Please wait your turn. I have been waiting my turn, the elderly woman said. I have been waiting for 20 minutes while you have been harassing this man and his daughter for no reason. I saw you help that other customer quickly. But this man, you keep asking him for more and more things. Other people in line started to murmur in agreement. They had noticed it too. Sarah's face became even redder. I am just doing my job, she said defensively. No, you are not, the elderly woman said. You are doing something else entirely. Daniel, who had been standing nearby, came back over. He could see that the situation was getting worse. Sarah, maybe I should take over this transaction, he said quietly. No, Sarah said stubbornly. I can handle it. At that moment, the father's phone rang. He pulled it out of his pocket and looked at the screen. His face became serious. I need to take this call, he said. It is important. May I step aside for just a moment? Sarah waved her hand dismissively. Fine, but make it quick. The father squeezed his daughter's shoulder gently. Stay right here, sweetheart. Sit on that bench right there where I can see you. I will be right back. 2 minutes, okay? The little girl nodded. She walked slowly to a bench that was about 10 feet away. She sat down and hugged her teddy bear close. She watched her father walk a little further away to take his phone call. She could see his back and the way he stood very straight and tall. With the father gone, Sarah turned to her coworker at the next counter. She leaned over and said, just loud enough for several people to hear. Some people try to use money that is not really theirs. You have to be careful. You have to check everything. The coworker looked uncomfortable and did not respond, but several customers heard what Sarah said. The elderly woman in the purple coat heard it. Her face became angry. She opened her mouth to say something, but then she stopped. She decided to wait and see what would happen next. On the bench, the little girl heard it too. She was young, but she was not stupid. She understood what the lady was suggesting about her daddy. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. She tried to be quiet, but her shoulders shook as she cried. Another customer, a young woman with dark hair, noticed the crying child. She walked over and sat down next to her. Hey there, she said gently. Are you okay? The little girl shook her head no. She could not speak because she was crying too hard. Is that your daddy over there? The woman asked, pointing to the father on the phone. The girl nodded yes. He looks like a good daddy, the woman said kindly. Everything will be okay. The father finished his phone call and turned around. When he saw his daughter crying on the bench, his entire face changed. The patience he had been holding on to disappeared. His jaw became tight. His eyes became hard. He walked quickly back to the bench and knelt down in front of his daughter. Baby, what is wrong? He asked, though he thought he knew the answer. The girl threw her arms around his neck and cried into his shoulder. I want to go home, Daddy, she sobbed. Please, can we go home? The father held her tight. He felt anger burning inside his chest like fire. But more than anger, he felt sadness. He had brought his daughter here for a happy reason. He had wanted to teach her something good. Instead, she had learned something cruel. He stood up, lifting his daughter in his arms, even though she was getting a bit big for that. He carried her back to the counter where Sarah stood. Sarah looked at the crying child without any expression of sympathy. "I would like to speak to the manager," the father said. His voice was quiet but firm. "Right now?" Sarah smirked a little. "Fine," she said. "I will get the manager, but they will tell you the same thing I did." She picked up her phone and called someone. "Patricia? We have a situation out here. A customer is demanding to speak with you." She paused, listening. "Yes, right away." Sarah hung up the phone and looked at the father with a satisfied expression. She thought the manager would support her. She thought everything she had done was right and proper. She had no idea that her whole world was about to change. The father stood at the counter with his daughter still in his arms. She had stopped crying quite so hard now, but tears still ran down her face. She kept her face pressed against her father's shoulder. Her teddy bear was squished between them. The father rubbed her back gently in slow circles, trying to comfort her. Sarah stood on the other side of the counter with her arms crossed. She kept glancing at the door to the manager's office. She looked confident, like she had done nothing wrong. She truly believed that the manager would come out and support everything she had done. After all, she thought she was just being careful and following procedures. Daniel stood a few feet away, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. He looked nervous. His face showed that he knew something was not right about this whole situation. He had tried to help, but Sarah had not listened to him. Now he wondered if he should have done more. Should he have insisted on taking over? Should he have called the manager himself earlier? The line of customers behind the father had grown even longer now. At least 8 people waited, maybe more. Some of them looked annoyed at the wait. But others, especially those who had been there long enough to see what was happening, looked angry for a different reason. They were angry at how the father and daughter were being treated. The elderly woman in the purple coat still stood in the line. She had her purse clutched in her hands and her mouth was pressed into a tight line of disapproval. She kept shaking her head slightly as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Next to her, a middle-aged man in a business suit had also been watching everything. He leaned over and whispered something to the elderly woman. She nodded in agreement. At the bench where the little girl had been sitting, the young woman with dark hair still sat. She watched the scene with sad eyes. She had children of her own at home. She knew what it was like to see a child cry. And she knew that this little girl was crying because she had felt the sting of unfairness for perhaps the first time in her young life. That broke the woman's heart. The father continued to hold his daughter. He swayed slightly, rocking her the way he used to when she was a baby. He whispered to her quietly, words that only she could hear. "You are smart. You are kind. You are important. And you are loved. Always remember that, no matter what anyone else says or does." The girl nodded against his shoulder. Her crying was becoming softer now, turning into small hiccups. She felt safe in her father's arms. Even though the situation was scary and confusing, she knew her daddy would protect her. Sarah looked at her watch, then at the office door again. She seemed impatient now. She probably wanted to get this over with so she could go back to her normal work. She had no idea that nothing was going to be normal after this. A door opened on the far side of the bank. It was a wooden door with a gold nameplate on it. The nameplate read, "Patricia Daniels, branch manager." A woman stepped out of the office. She was in her early 50s, with short dark hair that was starting to gray at the temples. She wore a professional navy blue suit and carried herself with confidence. She had been the manager of this branch for 12 years and took pride in running a good bank. Patricia walked briskly across the bank floor, her heels clicking on the polished tile. Her face showed concern. Sarah had said there was a situation, and Patricia wanted to handle it quickly and professionally. She was thinking about what she would say to calm down an upset customer. She was thinking about how to solve the problem efficiently, but then she got closer. She could see past the small crowd of people waiting in line. She could see the man standing at Sarah's counter, holding a little girl in his arms. At first, she only saw his back, but something about the way he stood, the shape of his shoulders, seemed familiar to her. Patricia walked faster. She moved around the line of customers, saying, "Excuse me, pardon me," as she passed, and then she got close enough to see the man's face in profile. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth opened slightly. All the color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and shocked. "Oh no." she whispered to herself. Oh, no, she knew exactly who this man was. She had met him several times before at community events. She had seen him at charity fundraisers. She had seen his picture in the newspaper. And most importantly, she knew that he was one of the bank's most important customers, not just because of his personal accounts, but because of his connections to the hospital system that did millions of dollars of business with their bank. Patricia rushed forward now, almost running. Her face showed genuine concern and alarm. Sarah saw her coming and straightened up, expecting support. Instead, Patricia walked right past Sarah without even looking at her. She went straight to the father. Dr. Harrison, Patricia said, her voice breathless. She put her hand on her chest as if trying to catch her breath. Dr. Harrison, I am so sorry. I did not know you were here. I did not know there was any problem. The father turned to look at Patricia. He recognized her too. Hello, Patricia, he said. His voice was tired and strained. Sarah's confident expression began to crack. She looked confused. Why was the manager calling this man doctor? Why did she look so worried and apologetic? Patricia looked at the little girl in the father's arms. The child's face was red and puffy from crying. Her eyes were swollen. Patricia's heart sank. Is this your daughter? She asked gently. Yes, the father said. This is my little girl. Patricia felt sick to her stomach. A child had been made to cry in her bank. And not just any child, but the daughter of Dr. Harrison, one of the most respected men in the community. But more than that, any child crying because of bad treatment was unacceptable to Patricia. She ran a good bank. This should never happen. What happened here? Patricia asked, though she was starting to understand. She looked from Dr. Harrison to Sarah to Daniel. Dr. Harrison carefully set his daughter down on her feet. But he kept holding her hand. The little girl stayed pressed close to his leg, peeking out at Patricia shyly. I came here to open a savings account for my daughter, Dr. Harrison said. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. I wanted to teach her about saving money, about being responsible with finances. Instead, she learned a very different lesson today. Patricia closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. Please, she said. Please tell me everything that happened. I need to know. Dr. Harrison began to speak. He told her about how Sarah had questioned his identification, saying it looked suspicious. He told her about how she demanded more and more paperwork, things that were never required. He told her about how she questioned where his money came from. He told her about how he watched other customers, white customers being served quickly while he and his daughter were made to wait and wait. He told her about how Sarah had suggested loudly enough for others to hear that some people try to use money that is not theirs. With each thing Dr. Harrison said, Patricia's face became more angry and more horrified. She kept glancing at Sarah, who was now looking very nervous. Sarah's face had gone from confident to worried to scared in just a few minutes. The elderly woman in the purple coat stepped forward. Excuse me, she said to Patricia. I saw the whole thing. I have been standing in this line for 25 minutes now, watching. Everything this man said is true. I heard it all with my own ears. And I saw how that employee treated him compared to how she treated white customers. The difference was clear as day. The middle-aged man in the business suit nodded. I saw it too, he said. I was going to say something earlier, but I wanted to wait and see if the situation would be resolved. But yes, the way this family was treated was completely inappropriate. Several other customers murmured in agreement. Some nodded their heads. The young woman who had sat with the little girl on the bench came over too. That poor little girl was crying her eyes out, she said, her own eyes getting watery. She did not understand why someone was being so mean to her daddy. Patricia listened to all of this. She felt her anger growing, but she kept her professional composure. She needed to stay calm so she could handle this correctly. She turned to Sarah. Sarah, is this true? Patricia asked. Her voice was quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that was more frightening than yelling. Did you do all of these things? Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it again. She tried to think of what to say. I was just being thorough, she finally said. I was just following procedures. What procedures? Patricia asked, her voice sharp now. Show me the procedure that says we question the legitimacy of a valid driver's license. Show me the procedure that says we need 3 months of pay stubs to open a simple savings account. Show me the procedure that says we make assumptions about where people's money comes from. Sarah said nothing. She looked down at her counter. Daniel stepped forward. Patricia, she called me over to look at the documents. I checked everything. It was all legitimate. I told her that. But she insisted on continuing. Patricia nodded. She looked at Daniel with an expression that said they would talk more about this later. Then she turned back to Dr. Harrison. Dr. Harrison, I cannot apologize enough for what happened here today, Patricia said. Her eyes were starting to get shiny with tears. This is not how we do business. This is not who we are. Or at least, this is not who we should be. The little girl peeked up at Patricia. My daddy did not do anything wrong, she said in a small voice. It was the first time she had spoken since her father had asked for the manager. Patricia knelt down so she was at the same height as the little girl. You are absolutely right, she said gently. Your daddy did nothing wrong at all. And neither did you. I am so sorry that you had a bad experience here today. You deserve so much better. A tear rolled down Patricia's cheek. She was a professional, and she rarely cried at work. But seeing this child's sad face, knowing that this child had been hurt by prejudice and unfairness in her bank, was too much. She wiped the tear away quickly. Dr. Harrison watched Patricia carefully. He could see that her emotion was genuine. She was truly upset about what had happened. That meant something to him. But it did not fix what had occurred. It did not erase the damage that had been done. Patricia stood back up, wiping her eyes quickly. She needed to be professional now, even though her heart was breaking for this family. She took a deep breath and looked at Dr. Harrison. Please, she said, let me handle this situation properly. But first I need to make sure you and your daughter are taken care of. Would you be willing to come to my office? We can talk there more privately. Dr. Harrison looked down at his daughter. The little girl looked up at him with those big, trusting eyes. He thought about it for a moment. Part of him wanted to just leave the bank and never come back. But another part of him knew that leaving would not solve anything. It would not change what happened. And it would not stop it from happening to someone else. All right, Dr. Harrison said. We will come to your office, Patricia nodded gratefully. Then she turned to face all the customers who had been waiting in line. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize deeply for the delay and for the disturbing scene you had to witness. Please give me just a few minutes to address this situation. Daniel will help serve you while I am gone. And I promise you this matter will be taken seriously. The elderly woman in the purple coat spoke up again. You better take it seriously, she said firmly. Because I am a long-time customer of this bank and I have never seen anything so disgraceful. I understand, Patricia said. And I promise you I will. Patricia then turned to Sarah. Her face became stern and cold. Sarah, I need you to come to my office as well. Right now, Sarah's face went pale. She had been hoping she could somehow avoid this, but now she knew there was no escape. She nodded silently and came out from behind her counter. Her hands were shaking slightly. As they walked across the bank toward Patricia's office, everyone watched them. The customers, the other bank employees, everyone. The bank had been filled with the normal sounds of business, typing, talking, phones ringing. Now it was mostly quiet. People whispered to each other, but softly. Dr. Harrison held his daughter's hand as they walked. The little girl's other hand still clutched her teddy bear. She stayed very close to her father's leg, almost hiding behind him. She did not understand everything that was happening, but she knew it was serious. They reached Patricia's office and she opened the door wide. It was a nice office with a big wooden desk, comfortable chairs and windows that looked out onto the street. There were certificates and awards hanging on the walls. Pictures of Patricia with important-looking people. Shelves with books about banking and business. Please sit down, Patricia said to Dr. Harrison, gesturing to two comfortable chairs in front of her desk. Dr. Harrison helped his daughter into one chair, and he sat in the other. The little girl's feet did not quite reach the floor, so they dangled in the air. Sarah came in last and stood awkwardly near the door. Patricia closed the door behind her. Then Patricia walked around to sit at her own desk. She folded her hands on top of the desk and looked at Sarah with a serious expression. Sarah, before I say anything else, I want you to explain your actions, Patricia said, and I want the truth. All of it. Sarah shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She looked at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at Patricia or Dr. Harrison. I already told you, she said weakly. I was just being careful, following procedures. No, Patricia said, her voice sharp. That is not the truth, and we all know it. There is no procedure that requires what you did today. You asked for documentation that we never ask for. You questioned a valid ID. You suggested that this man's money might not be his own. Why? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she mumbled something so quietly that no one could hear. Speak up, Sarah, Patricia said. I need to hear you say it. Sarah's face turned red. She looked angry now, defensive. Fine, she said, her voice louder. He did not look like someone who would have a lot of money to put in a bank. I thought maybe something was not right. I thought I was protecting the bank. The words hung in the air like poison. Dr. Harrison felt his chest get tight with anger. His daughter looked confused. She did not fully understand what Sarah meant, but she knew it was bad. Patricia's face became very hard. And why did you think that, Sarah? Based on what exactly? Sarah said nothing. She just stood there with her face red and her eyes starting to water. I will tell you why, Patricia said, her voice cutting through the silence. You made an assumption based on the color of his skin. You saw a black man and a black child, and you decided they must be up to something wrong. That is racial profiling, Sarah. That is discrimination, and that has no place in this bank or anywhere else. I did not mean it that way, Sarah said, but her voice was weak and unconvincing. Patricia stood up from her desk. She was not a tall woman, but in that moment she seemed very tall and powerful. It does not matter what you meant. What matters is what you did. You humiliated a customer. You made a child cry. You created a hostile environment. And worst of all, you did it based on prejudice. Patricia then turned to Dr. Harrison and his daughter. Her expression softened. I need to tell you something, she said. And Sarah needs to hear this too. Dr. Harrison is not just any customer. Though every customer deserves to be treated with respect, regardless of who they are. Patricia walked to her filing cabinet and pulled out a folder. She opened it and showed Sarah some papers. Dr. Harrison has been a customer of this bank for 15 years. He has multiple accounts with us. His mortgage is with us. His business accounts are with us. But more than that, do you know who Dr. Harrison is? Sarah shook her head slightly, looking scared now. Dr. Harrison is one of the top cardiothoracic surgeons in this city, Patricia explained. He performs heart surgeries. He saves lives. He is on the board of directors at City General Hospital. That hospital has corporate accounts with our bank worth millions of dollars. The hospital's financial relationship with us exists partly because of Dr. Harrison's recommendation. Sarah's face went from red to white. All the blood drained away. She looked like she might be sick. He also sits on several charity boards, Patricia continued. He volunteers at free clinics. He has received awards for his community service. Last year, he was named one of the most influential people in our city. His picture was in the newspaper. On the front page, Dr. Harrison held up his hand. Patricia, he said quietly. Stop. Patricia looked at him surprised. But I am explaining who you are, she said. I know, Dr. Harrison said. But my credentials should not matter. That is the point. Yes, I am a doctor. Yes, I have had some success in my career. But I should have been treated with respect even if I was not a doctor, even if I was a janitor, even if I worked at a fast food restaurant. Every person who walks into this bank deserves to be treated with dignity. My daughter deserves to be treated with dignity. His voice was rising now, getting more passionate. The problem is not that Sarah did not know who I am. The problem is that she looked at me and my daughter and made assumptions. She saw our skin color and decided we must be criminals or liars. And the terrifying thing is, what if I did not have the position I have? What if I did not have the ability to demand to see the manager? What if I was just a regular person trying to open an account? Would anyone have cared? Would anyone have stopped her? The little girl looked up at her father. She had never heard him sound like this before. His voice was not angry exactly, but it was strong and serious and full of emotion. Patricia sat back down slowly. She nodded, taking in his words. You are absolutely right, she said quietly. You are completely right. This should never happen to anyone, regardless of their position or profession. She turned to Sarah again. Do you understand what you have done? She asked. Do you understand the harm you have caused? Sarah's eyes were full of tears now. I am sorry, she whispered. Sorry to who? Patricia asked. Sorry that you got caught? Sorry that he turned out to be important? Or are you truly sorry for your actions and the pain you caused? Sarah looked at Dr. Harrison and his daughter. The little girl was watching her with wide, innocent eyes. Sarah thought about her own life, her own beliefs. She thought about the assumptions she had made without even realizing she was making them. For the first time, she seemed to understand the weight of what she had done. "I am sorry," Sarah said again, looking right at Dr. Harrison. "I am truly sorry. I was wrong. I made terrible assumptions. I let my biases control my actions. And I hurt you and your daughter. That was wrong." Dr. Harrison studied her face, trying to see if she really meant it. He wanted to believe that people could change, could learn. But he also knew that sorry was just a word if it did not lead to real change. "I appreciate your apology," he said carefully. "But my concern is not just for me and my daughter. My concern is for every black person, every brown person, every person who does not look like what you think they should look like, who might walk into this bank. What happens to them?" Patricia spoke up. "I can answer that," she said. "What happens is that this never happens again. Not in my bank. Not on my watch." She looked at Sarah with a gaze that was hard as steel. "Sarah, you are suspended, effective immediately. There will be a full investigation into this incident and into your history with other customers. Depending on what we find, you may not have a job here anymore." Sarah's face crumpled. She had worked at this bank for 5 years. Banking was her career. But she nodded, accepting her fate. "I understand," she said quietly. "You can go now," Patricia said. "Collect your personal belongings from your desk and leave. Human Resources will contact you about the investigation." Sarah walked slowly to the door. Before she left, she looked back one more time at the little girl in the chair. The girl was still hugging her teddy bear, watching everything with those big eyes. Sarah felt shame wash over her. This child would remember this day for the rest of her life, and it was Sarah's fault. Sarah left the office, closing the door quietly behind her. Patricia sat in silence for a moment. Then she looked at Dr. Harrison with tired, sad eyes. "I do not know what else to say except that I am deeply, truly sorry. This should never have happened." Dr. Harrison sat in the chair in Patricia's office, his daughter still close beside him. The office felt very quiet after Sarah had left. Outside the closed door, they could hear the normal sounds of the bank starting up again. People talking, keyboards clicking, phones ringing. But inside this office, the air felt heavy with everything that had just happened. Patricia looked exhausted. She rubbed her forehead with her hand, then looked up at Dr. Harrison and his daughter. "Let me make this right," she said, "please. Let me try to fix this situation." "How?" Dr. Harrison asked. His voice was tired now, not angry anymore, just tired and sad. "How do you fix something like this? How do you erase what my daughter experienced today?" Patricia's eyes moved to the little girl. The child was quieter now, no longer crying, but her eyes were still red and puffy. She held her teddy bear close and leaned against her father's arm. "You are right," Patricia said softly. "I cannot erase it. I cannot take it back. But I can try to make sure it never happens again. And I can try to make sure something good comes from this terrible situation." She stood up and walked around her desk. She pulled another chair over so she could sit closer to them, more like friends talking rather than across a big desk. She sat down and leaned forward. "May I ask you something?" Patricia said, looking at Dr. Harrison. "What were you hoping to teach your daughter by bringing her here today?" Dr. Harrison thought for a moment. He looked down at his little girl, then back at Patricia. "I wanted to teach her about responsibility, about saving money, about planning for the future. Her birthday is next month. She will be 8 years old. I thought it was time for her to start learning about how money works." "That is a beautiful goal," Patricia said. "My father did the same thing for me when I was young. He took me to a bank and helped me open my first account. I remember how special I felt, like I was growing up, like I was being trusted with something important." The little girl looked up at Patricia with interest now. She spoke in a small voice. "Did the bank people be nice to you?" Patricia's heart broke a little at that question. Such a simple question, but it showed how much this experience had affected the child. "Yes, sweetheart," Patricia said gently. "They were very nice to me, and they should have been very nice to you too. I am so sorry they were not." Dr. Harrison cleared his throat. "The problem is, Patricia, this is not just about opening an account anymore. This is about something much bigger. My daughter just learned that some people will judge her before they even know her. She learned that the color of her skin might make people treat her unfairly. That is a heavy lesson for a 7-year-old. "I know," Patricia said quietly, "and I wish I could protect her from that. But I cannot change the world. What I can change is my bank. I can make sure that every employee here understands that discrimination will not be tolerated. Not subtle discrimination. Not just being careful discrimination. None of it. Dr. Harrison studied Patricia's face. He had known her for a few years, mostly through business and community events. She had always seemed like a decent person, professional and fair. He wanted to believe that she would follow through on her words. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. Patricia took a deep breath. "First, I want to personally process your daughter's account opening right now. No more delays. No more questions. Just a simple, respectful transaction the way it should have been from the start. Second, I am going to implement mandatory bias training for every single employee in this branch. Not just watch a video training. Real, meaningful training with discussions and accountability." She continued, her voice becoming more passionate. "Third, I am going to review Sarah's interactions with other customers. If there is a pattern of this behavior, I need to know about it. And I need to make it right with anyone else who was treated unfairly. Fourth, I want to establish a clear complaint process, so if anything like this ever happens again, customers know exactly how to report it and know that they will be heard." Dr. Harrison listened carefully. These were good steps. They were concrete actions, not just empty promises. But he was still thinking about his daughter. He was still thinking about what this day had cost her. "What about her?" he asked, nodding toward his daughter. "What about the damage that was done to her today?" Patricia looked at the little girl for a long moment. Then she had an idea. She stood up and walked to a shelf on her wall. On the shelf was a small plant in a pretty blue pot. Patricia picked up the pot carefully and brought it over. She knelt down in front of Dr. Harrison's daughter so they were at the same eye level. "Sweetheart, what is your name?" Patricia asked gently. The little girl looked at her father, who nodded that it was okay to answer. "Naya," the girl said quietly. "Naya, that is a beautiful name," Patricia said.
"Nia, I want to tell you something very important."
"What happened here today was wrong. It was not your fault. It was not your daddy's fault. It was the fault of someone who forgot something very important." "What did they forget?" Nia asked. "They forgot that every person is valuable," Patricia said. "They forgot that you cannot know someone just by looking at them. They forgot to be kind. But you know what? I do not think you will ever forget to be kind. Do you know why?" Nia shook her head. "Because you have a daddy who is teaching you the right way," Patricia said, "and because you have experienced something unfair, and that will help you see when other people are being treated unfairly. You will be able to stand up for them. You will be able to be the kind of person who makes the world better." Nia thought about this. She was only 7, almost 8, but she was a smart little girl. She understood what Patricia was saying. Patricia held out the plant. "This is a money tree plant. Do you know about money trees?" Nia shook her head again. "They are special plants," Patricia explained. "Some people believe they bring good luck and prosperity. But I like them for a different reason. Do you see how it has many branches and many leaves?" Nia nodded, looking at the plant. "Each leaf had to grow slowly, one at a time," Patricia said. "Just like you will grow and learn slowly, one lesson at a time. Some lessons will be happy ones. Some will be hard ones, like today. But all of them will help you grow into a strong, wise person. I want you to have this plant. Will you take care of it?" Nia looked at her father. Dr. Harrison felt a lump in his throat. This small gesture, this kindness shown to his daughter, meant more to him than any apology or promise. He nodded to Nia. "Yes," Nia said to Patricia, "I will take care of it." She reached out and took the small pot carefully in her hands, balancing it on her lap next to her teddy bear. Patricia smiled, and there were tears in her eyes again. She stood back up and looked at Dr. Harrison. "I know this does not fix what happened, but I want your daughter to have something positive to remember from today, too, not just the bad parts." Dr. Harrison felt his own eyes getting wet. He blinked quickly. "Thank you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Patricia went back to her desk and pulled out some forms. "Now let us open that savings account. The right way this time." She came back and sat with them. She explained each form in simple language that even Nia could understand. She talked about how savings accounts work, how interest helps money grow, how it is important to save a little bit regularly. She made it educational and interesting. Nia listened carefully, asking questions. "If I put $10 in, how long until it becomes $20? She asked. Patricia smiled. "Well, that depends on the interest rate and how much you save. It might take a while for it to double just from interest alone." But if you keep adding a little bit of your allowance or birthday money each month, it will grow much faster. I can do that, Nia said with determination. She was starting to feel better now, starting to feel excited about her new account. Dr. Harrison filled out the necessary forms. This time no one questioned his ID. No one asked where his money came from. No one made him feel like a criminal. It took less than 15 minutes to complete everything that should have been completed an hour ago. When they were done, Patricia printed out a special welcome packet for Nia. It had her name on it and explained all about her new account. Patricia also gave Nia a special coin bank shaped like a small safe. Every time you add money to your real bank account, you can also put a coin in this bank at home, Patricia explained. That way you can watch your savings grow in 2 places. Nia smiled. It was the first real smile she had given since entering the bank that morning. Dr. Harrison saw that smile and felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. They stood up to leave. Dr. Harrison shook Patricia's hand. "Thank you for handling this with integrity," he said. "I hope you follow through on all the things you promised." "I will," Patricia said firmly. "You have my word." "And Dr. Harrison? I hope you will not give up on us completely. I know you might want to take your business elsewhere after today. I would not blame you if you did. But I hope you will give us a chance to prove we can do better." Dr. Harrison thought about this. Part of him did want to leave and never come back. But another part of him thought about what Patricia had said to Nia, about how hard experiences can teach us to stand up and make things better. "I will think about it," he said honestly. "Right now I need to take my daughter home and talk with her about what happened today. Help her process it. But I will think about what you said." Patricia nodded. She understood. She walked them to the door of her office and opened it. As they stepped out into the main bank area, something unexpected happened. The elderly woman in the purple coat was still there. She had not left. She had waited. When she saw Dr. Harrison and Nia coming out, she walked up to them. "Excuse me," she said to Dr. Harrison. "I wanted to stay and make sure everything was okay. I wanted you to know that not everyone in this bank thought what happened was acceptable. I saw it, I spoke up. And if you ever need a witness to what occurred here today, I will be happy to provide that testimony." Dr. Harrison was surprised and touched. "Thank you," he said. "That means a lot." The woman smiled at Nia. "You have a wonderful father, young lady. And you are a brave girl. Do not let anyone make you feel less than you are." Nia smiled shyly and hugged her teddy bear and her new plant. 3 days passed after the incident at the bank. Dr. Harrison had taken those days to spend extra time with his daughter. They had long talks about what happened. He explained to Nia, in words she could understand, why some people act the way they do. He told her about prejudice and bias. He told her that it was wrong, but that it existed in the world. Nia listened carefully. She asked many questions. "Why did that lady think bad things about us, Daddy?" she asked one evening as they watered her new money tree plant together. Dr. Harrison chose his words carefully. "Some people learn to judge others by how they look instead of who they are. Sometimes they learn this from their families, sometimes from their friends, sometimes from things they see on TV or read in books, but it is not right, and we have to be better than that." "I will never judge people like that," Nia said firmly. "I know you will not, sweetheart." Dr. Harrison said, pulling her into a hug, "You have a good heart." But while Dr. Harrison was at home caring for his daughter, Patricia was at the bank working hard. She had not slept well since that Tuesday. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Nia's tear-stained face. She saw the disappointment in Dr. Harrison's eyes. She heard the elderly woman's words about how disgraceful the situation had been. Patricia knew she had to act, not just for Dr. Harrison, but for every customer who walked through the bank's doors. She started by calling an emergency meeting with all the bank employees. Every single person who worked at that branch was required to attend. The meeting was held in the bank's conference room on Thursday morning before the bank opened. 23 employees sat around the long table and in chairs along the walls. Some looked curious. Some looked nervous. They all knew something serious had happened, even if they did not know all the details. Patricia stood at the front of the room. She looked at each person's face before she began speaking. Daniel was there looking uncomfortable. The young woman who had helped Nia when she was crying sat in the back. The teller who had quickly served white customers while Dr. Harrison waited was there too, looking down at the table. "Thank you all for coming," Patricia began. "I called this meeting because something happened this week that can never happen again. An incident occurred that was discriminatory, unprofessional, and unacceptable. A customer and his young daughter were treated poorly because of the color of their skin." The room became very quiet. People shifted in their seats. Patricia continued. She told them what happened, though she did not mention Sarah by name at first. She described how a customer had been questioned excessively, how his valid identification had been called suspicious, how he had been treated differently than white customers. She told them about the little girl who cried. Some employees looked shocked. Others looked guilty, as if they remembered seeing something but had not spoken up. A few looked defensive. "I know some of you witnessed this incident," Patricia said, "and I know none of you stopped it. That is a problem too. When we see injustice happening and we say nothing, we become part of the problem." Daniel raised his hand. When Patricia nodded at him, he spoke. "I tried to help," he said. "I checked the documents and told Sarah they were fine. But I did not do enough. I should have insisted on taking over. I should have called you immediately." "I am sorry," Patricia nodded. "Thank you for that, Daniel. And you are right. We all need to do more. We need to speak up. We need to intervene. We need to make sure every customer feels welcome and respected." She then explained the changes that would be happening. Every employee would go through mandatory diversity and inclusion training. Not just an online video, but real workshops with discussions and role-playing scenarios. There would be clear policies about fair treatment. There would be consequences for discrimination. "I also want to form a customer relations committee," Patricia said. "A group of employees who will review complaints and concerns. We need accountability. We need transparency." A young teller near the back raised her hand timidly. "What happened to Sarah?" she asked. Patricia took a deep breath. "Sarah has been suspended while we conduct a full investigation. I have been reviewing her history with customers over the past year. I have been looking at complaints. I have been talking to other employees, and I have found that this was not an isolated incident." She pulled out a folder. In the past 18 months, 3 different customers filed informal complaints about Sarah. All 3 were people of color. One said she was rude and dismissive. Another said she took much longer to process his transaction than she did for other customers. A third said Sarah made a comment that made her feel unwelcome. Patricia's voice was hard now. "These complaints were noted but never seriously investigated. That is my fault. I should have paid more attention. I should have seen the pattern. But I did not, and because of that the behavior continued. It escalated. And now a 7-year-old girl has been traumatized." The room was silent. Several employees had tears in their eyes. They were starting to understand the full weight of what had happened. "The investigation is ongoing," Patricia said, "but I can tell you that it is unlikely Sarah will return to work here. Her actions violated our policies and our values. But firing one person is not enough. We all need to look at ourselves. We all need to examine our own biases. We all need to commit to doing better." After the meeting, Patricia began the second part of her plan. She started calling customers. She called the 3 people who had filed complaints about Sarah. She apologized to them. She explained what the bank was doing to improve. She asked if they would be willing to come in and share their experiences with the staff during training. 2 of them agreed. One of them, a black woman named Mrs. Thompson, came to the bank that very afternoon. Patricia sat down with her privately and listened to her story. Mrs. Thompson explained how Sarah had made her feel small and unwanted when she came in to ask about a loan. How Sarah had questioned whether she really qualified. How Sarah had suggested maybe she should try a different bank. "I felt ashamed," Mrs. Thompson said, tears in her eyes. "Like I had done something wrong just by walking through the door. I have good credit. I have a steady job. But she made me feel like I was not good enough." Patricia apologized again and again. She offered Mrs. Thompson special loan rates. She offered to personally handle any future transactions. But Mrs. Thompson said something that stuck with Patricia. "I do not want special treatment," Mrs. Thompson said. "I just want to be treated like a human being, like everyone else." That should not be too much to ask. Those words echoed in Patricia's mind. They were the same words Dr. Harrison had essentially said. People did not want special treatment. They just wanted equal treatment. Basic dignity and respect. By the end of the week, Patricia had made significant progress. She had hired a professional diversity consultant to develop and lead training sessions. She had drafted new policies. She had created the Customer Relations Committee. And she had sent a letter to Dr. Harrison, updating him on everything she had done. She also included something else in the letter. An invitation. She asked if Dr. Harrison would be willing to come speak to the staff during one of the training sessions, to share his perspective, to help the employees understand the real impact of their actions. Patricia did not know if he would agree. She would not blame him if he said no, but she hoped he would give them the chance to learn from what happened. On Saturday morning, Patricia received a phone call at home. It was Dr. Harrison. "I got your letter," he said. "I have been thinking about your invitation." Patricia held her breath. "I will do it," Dr. Harrison said. "I will come speak to your staff. Not for you, not for the bank, but because I do not want what happened to my daughter to happen to anyone else's child. If sharing our story can help prevent that, then it is worth it." Patricia felt relief wash over her. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much. I promise you we are committed to real change." "I hope so," Dr. Harrison said, "because I am going to hold you to that. And if I come speak to your staff, I am not going to make it easy or comfortable for them. I am going to tell them the truth. The hard truth." "That is exactly what we need," Patricia said. They set a date for 2 weeks later. Patricia would organize a special extended training session. All employees would attend, and Dr. Harrison would be the guest speaker. After hanging up the phone, Patricia sat down and took a deep breath. She felt like she was finally doing the right thing. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. Changing hearts and minds took time. Changing culture took sustained effort. She could not let up. She could not go back to business as usual. That same weekend, Patricia made one more important decision. She decided to share the story more widely. She contacted the regional manager for their bank and explained everything that had happened. She explained the steps she was taking. She suggested that maybe these changes should happen at all the branches, not just hers. The regional manager was upset when he heard the story. But he was also impressed by Patricia's response. "You are right," he said. "This needs to be a company-wide initiative. Let us use your branch as a pilot program. If it works well, we will roll it out to all our locations." Patricia agreed. She knew this meant more work, more responsibility, more scrutiny. But she also knew it was the right thing to do. Over the next week, Patricia prepared for Dr. Harrison's visit. She worked with the diversity consultant to structure the training session. She gathered the staff and prepared them for what was coming. She told them that they needed to listen with open hearts and minds, that they needed to really hear what Dr. Harrison had to say, that this was not just another boring training they had to sit through. This was important. Some employees were nervous. They knew the story now. They knew about Nia crying. They knew about the discrimination. Some of them felt guilty, even though they had not been directly involved. They had worked alongside Sarah. They had not noticed what was happening. Or maybe they had noticed but had not said anything. The training was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after the incident. The bank would open late that day so everyone could attend. As the day approached, Patricia found herself feeling nervous. She hoped Dr. Harrison's visit would be a turning point, a moment of real learning and growth. But she also worried. What if some employees reacted badly? What if they became defensive? What if they did not really listen? All she could do was hope. Hope and pray that this would lead to real, lasting change. The Tuesday morning arrived. Patricia came to the bank extra early, even though the training was not scheduled to start until 9. She wanted to make sure everything was perfect. She arranged chairs in the conference room so everyone could see the front. She set up a microphone and a projector. She prepared coffee and pastries for everyone. At 8:30, employees started arriving. They came in quietly, talking in low voices. The mood was serious. Everyone knew this was an important day. They took their seats slowly. Some looked nervous. Some looked curious. Some looked like they just wanted to get through it. Daniel sat near the front. He had been thinking about the incident every day since it happened. He had been thinking about how he could have done more. He was determined to learn from this. The young teller who had comforted Nia sat in the middle. She had been deeply affected by seeing that little girl cry. She wanted to make sure nothing like that ever happened again. At exactly 9 o'clock, Patricia stood at the front of the room. "Good morning, everyone," she said. "Thank you for being here. Today is going to be difficult. We are going to talk about some uncomfortable things. But discomfort is where growth happens. I need you all to be open, be honest. Be willing to look at yourselves and your actions." The diversity consultant, a woman named Dr. Martinez, stood up next. She was a professional who had worked with many companies on these issues. She had kind eyes but a firm voice. She talked about unconscious bias, about how everyone has prejudices whether they realize it or not, about how these biases can affect our behavior without us even knowing it. She showed some videos. She had them do some exercises. She asked them questions that made them think. The employees participated, some more willingly than others. They were starting to understand the concepts, but it was still somewhat abstract, still somewhat distant. Then at 10 o'clock, there was a knock on the conference room door. Patricia walked over and opened it. Dr. Harrison stood there, dressed in a suit. And next to him, holding his hand, was Nia. She wore a pretty blue dress and held her teddy bear. When Patricia had invited Dr. Harrison, she had not expected him to bring his daughter. But now she understood why he had. "Everyone," Patricia said, her voice shaking slightly with emotion, "I would like you to meet Dr. Harrison. And this is his daughter, Nia." The room became completely silent. Every person sat up straighter. Every eye was on the man and the little girl at the door. Some employees felt their throats get tight, because this was not just a story anymore. This was a real person, a real child, someone they could see and hear. Dr. Harrison walked to the front of the room, Nia staying close by his side. Patricia brought them chairs and they sat down facing the group. Dr. Harrison helped his daughter get comfortable. Then he looked out at all the faces watching him. "Thank you for having us here today," Dr. Harrison began. His voice was calm and steady. "I know this might be uncomfortable for some of you, but I want you to understand something. This is not about making you feel bad. This is not about blaming anyone individually, except for the person whose actions caused this situation. This is about learning. This is about growing. This is about making sure what happened to my daughter never happens to anyone else." He paused, looking around the room. 2 weeks ago, I brought Nia to this bank. I wanted to open a savings account for her. I wanted to teach her about money and responsibility. It was supposed to be a happy experience, a milestone, but instead it became something else entirely. Dr. Harrison then told the story. He told it from the beginning. How they walked in excited. How Sarah's expression changed when she saw them. How she questioned his ID. How she treated him differently than other customers. How she made him feel like a criminal. And how Nia, his sweet little girl, ended up crying on a bench. As he talked, many employees had tears in their eyes. Some looked down at their hands, unable to meet his gaze. The weight of what had happened was becoming real to them. This was not just a training scenario. This was something that had happened in their bank, to real people with real feelings. Then Dr. Harrison did something unexpected. He looked at his daughter. "Nia, do you want to tell them how you felt that day?" Nia looked up at her father, then out at all the people watching her. She was shy, but she was also brave. She nodded. "I was scared," Nia said in her small voice. Everyone in the room leaned forward to hear her better. "I did not understand why that lady was being mean to my daddy. My daddy is a good person. He helps people. He saves people's lives when their hearts are sick." She hugged her teddy bear closer. "I thought maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I was not supposed to be there. I started to cry because I wanted to go home, and I felt bad because my daddy looked sad, and I did not want him to be sad." Several people in the room were crying now. The young teller who had comforted Nia was wiping her eyes with a tissue. Even Daniel, who rarely showed much emotion, had to look away to compose himself. "But you know what?" Nia continued. "My daddy told me something important. He told me that I did not do anything wrong. He told me that I am smart and kind and important. And he told me that some people make mistakes, but that does not change who I am." Dr. Harrison put his arm around his daughter and gave her a gentle squeeze. Then he looked back at the employees. "My daughter learned a hard lesson that day," he said. "She learned that the world is not always fair, that people will judge her based on how she looks. But I also tried to teach her that she has value regardless of what anyone thinks, that she should hold her head high, that she should treat others with kindness even when they do not treat her kindly." He paused, his voice becoming stronger. But here is what I need you all to understand. My daughter should not have had to learn that lesson at 7 years old. Not in a bank. Not when we were just trying to do something normal and positive. She should have felt welcomed. She should have felt valued. She should have walked out of here excited about her new account, not traumatized by discrimination. Dr. Harrison stood up now. His presence filled the room. I am a surgeon. I have spent my life trying to help people, to save lives. I have worked hard to get where I am, but none of that should matter when it comes to basic respect. If I was not a doctor, would I deserve to be treated badly? If I was a teacher or a construction worker or unemployed, would that make it okay? No, every person deserves dignity. Every person deserves respect. He looked around the room, making eye contact with different people. Some of you might think this does not apply to you, because you were not the one who discriminated against me. But ask yourselves this. If you had seen what was happening, would you have spoken up? Would you have stopped it? Or would you have stayed quiet, not wanting to cause trouble? The room was heavy with that question. Many employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Martinez, the diversity consultant, stood up. Dr. Harrison has given you an incredible gift today, she said. He has shared his pain, his experience, and his daughter's experience. Most people who face discrimination do not get the chance to confront it directly. They just have to swallow it and move on. Dr. Harrison is giving you the opportunity to learn, to grow, to do better. She asked if anyone had questions for Dr. Harrison. At first, no one raised their hand. Then slowly Daniel did. Dr. Harrison, Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion, I want to apologize. I saw what was happening. I knew something was wrong, but I did not do enough to stop it. I told Sarah the documents were fine, but I did not insist on taking over. I did not call Patricia. I let it continue. And I am sorry. I will never make that mistake again. Dr. Harrison nodded. Thank you for that apology. Thank you for being willing to acknowledge your part in what happened. That takes courage, and that is the first step toward change. The young teller who had comforted Nia raised her hand next. I just want to say, she said, looking at Nia, you are a very brave girl, and your daddy is right. You are smart and kind and important. I have a daughter at home who is about your age, and I'm going to make sure I teach her to treat everyone with kindness no matter what they look like. Nia smiled shyly at her. More hands went up. More employees asked questions or shared their thoughts. The conversation lasted for over an hour. It was emotional. It was honest. It was exactly what needed to happen. Finally, Patricia stood up. Thank you, Dr. Harrison, for being here. Thank you, Nia, for being so brave. You have taught us all something important today. She turned to the employees. This is not the end of our work. This is just the beginning. We are going to continue training. We are going to implement new policies. We are going to create a culture where everyone feels welcome, and we are going to hold each other accountable. After the training session ended, something beautiful happened. Employees came up one by one to speak with Dr. Harrison and Nia. They thanked them. They apologized. They promised to do better. The young teller gave Nia a small stuffed animal, a little bird. To keep your teddy bear company, she said with a smile. The elderly woman in the purple coat had also been invited to the training. She came up and hugged Nia gently. You are a remarkable young lady, she said. Before they left, Patricia pulled Dr. Harrison aside. I have something to show you, she said. She led him to a wall near the entrance of the bank. There was a new plaque hanging there. It read, We believe in equality, dignity, and respect for all. Every person who enters this bank deserves to be treated with fairness and kindness. This is our promise to our community. It is a start, Patricia said. A reminder every day of what we stand for. Dr. Harrison read the plaque and nodded slowly. It is a good start, he agreed. Patricia then handed him an envelope. This is Nia's account information. I processed it myself, and I added something extra. The bank is making a contribution to her account as an apology. It is not meant to buy forgiveness. It is meant to show that we are serious about making this right. Dr. Harrison opened the envelope and looked inside. Then he closed it and looked at Patricia. Thank you, he said quietly. Not for the money, but for taking this seriously, for really listening, for trying to change. As they walked toward the door to leave, Nia tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, can we come back here sometimes? To put money in my account? Dr. Harrison looked down at his daughter, surprised. You want to come back here? Nia nodded. That nice lady said she will help me. And I want to watch my money grow in my account, just like my plant at home is growing. Dr. Harrison felt his eyes get wet. His daughter, who had been so hurt by this place, was willing to give it another chance. She was willing to believe that things could be better. If she could do that, then maybe he could too. Yes, he said, squeezing her hand. We can come back. They walked out of the bank together into the bright morning sunshine. Behind them, inside the bank, employees were having conversations. Real conversations about bias and fairness and doing better. Seeds of change had been planted. 3 months later, Patricia received a letter. It was from the regional office. The diversity training and policy changes that had been implemented at her branch had been so successful that they were being rolled out to all branches in the state. Other banks were even asking about their program, wanting to learn from their example. But more importantly, customers noticed the difference. The bank felt more welcoming. Employees were more mindful of their behavior. The Customer Relations Committee had received several compliments about improved service, and Dr. Harrison kept his word. Once a month, he brought Nia to the bank to make a deposit into her account. Sometimes Patricia helped them personally. Sometimes other employees did. But every time Nia was greeted with warmth and respect. She watched her account balance grow. She learned about interest in saving and planning for the future. But more than that, she learned something else. She learned that even when bad things happen, people can change. That speaking up matters. That one person's courage can lead to real transformation. On Nia's 8th birthday, Patricia sent her a special birthday card. Inside was a note that said, "Thank you for teaching us to be better. Thank you for giving us a second chance. You are already making the world a better place, and you are only 8 years old. Imagine what you will do as you grow up." Nia put the card on her dresser next to her money tree plant, which was growing taller every day, its leaves reaching toward the light.